Mr. Willi Menninghoff, APAC Director, Health Science Product Stewardship, Ramboll, Korea LLC. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me for the interview.
Would you talk about Ramboll offerings in India?
Yes. So Ramboll is a global company with different service lines in consulting. So architecture, engineering, building, transport, and environmental and health. And all of those service lines we also offering in India. Our entity in India has been established some 25 years ago, and we employ about 1,900 people in India.
And what are your offerings, sir, with respect to the division that you operate?
So the environmental and health, that's the division I'm operating in. We are consultants, and we do offer services in environmental impact assessments, life cycle assessments, regulatory compliance, and regulatory compliance, and of course also in India, but also across the globe. So basically for all the export markets, companies do send their products to. We are into due diligence, so when it comes to merger and acquisition, so supporting companies there into those assessments. What did I miss? Hazard and risk assessments. We have a very strong focus on sustainability and ESG offerings. So also when you look into the whole product life cycle, to really improve on different parts of it. And this is where you have the overlap between the environmental and health services and, for example, water, very important in India, where then those services kind of can find solution together for a client to really improve on their sustainability, on the sustainability of their operations.
You talked about multiple offerings. If you can talk one by one on, say, decarbonization services and the solutions that you would be offering for chemical and petrochemical sector.
Yeah. So let's say until a few years ago, we operated our service lines more or less independently. So for many years. So for example, Ramboll is also in energy, specifically in wind and solar energy, and the other service lines, as I said, building, infrastructure, and water, and so forth. And bottom line is, some couple of years ago, we basically said, okay, we basically need to go all in on sustainability. To really close the gap between where we are as a society today and where we need to be really in the decarbonization process. And instead of really looking into our services based on our service lines, we really put that into what we call unifying themes, and decarbonization is one of those. So it starts, of course, with things like very obvious the decarbonization through energy. So going away from fossil fuel into renewable energy, for example. But when you think about decarbonization, it of course goes further. You have embedded carbon, right, in every product you do. You have carbon emissions coming out of your supply chains. So really, and this is where the different service lines we do have can actually work together to find the best solution for our clients, to help them in their ways on the road to basically net zero carbon, or even beyond that.
If you talk about the life cycle assessment consulting services, what are the things that you do here?
So on the life cycle assessment, you have kind of different stages. One is where you look into the life cycle assessment on a site, but let's say from where I'm standing, specifically for the chemical industry, life cycle assessment will be the biggest challenge on life cycle assessments will be on the scope 3 emissions and the embedded carbon. So because at the end of the day, say if you look into some of the European regulation like the CSRD or the CBAM regulation, where you really have to report on embedded carbon on your product. So how do you do that? Right, so the only way really to get this information on a level that you can report on that and also that you can influence reducing your embedded carbon is really through a life cycle assessment, because the life cycle assessment will also help you to identify where basically the majority of your carbon footprint comes from. So and that might not be necessarily in your manufacturing side. It might come from the raw material you getting. If you change the source, you might change it, or on the ways how you transport your material.
On environment and health, what are the offerings that you do?
In environmental and health, as I said before, we do impact assessment, environmental assessments, life cycle assessments is part of the environmental and health offering, due diligence services. And the service line I'm specifically focusing on is regulatory compliance, where we do look specifically for the chemical industry and downstream and upstream supply chains of the chemical industry into the regulatory obligations, like REACH registration or biocide registrations, agrochemical, pharmaceuticals, classification of chemicals, certifying. We're supporting several clients on their responsible care endeavors from a product safety side, if you want to. So really the whole breadth on from cradle to grave. So also on the recycling piece, when you look into waste management or reducing waste, or can we do something else with waste?
And if you can talk about the product safety and stewardship services.
Yeah, so I'm kind of diving down from the environmental health product regulation. So when you think about, as a company, you want to start selling your products in a new country, right? How do you know what you need to actually do? So we look for companies into the regulations that actually apply to their product portfolio. So this is kind of a baseline report. So really to set the level, okay, this is what the company needs to do. And then when the company then starts exporting or want to export, we will also help them to acquire the required registrations, talking to regulators or helping them on the import procedures, and then post-market. You certainly, depending on the use of your substances, you might have further obligations coming out of the use of the products, which is where we can then also support them. We can monitor. We do monitoring on regulations, because regulations, specifically in Asia Pacific, are constantly evolving. So really, from cradle to grave solution. And we can, of course, basically chip in and chip out for our clients at every stage where they need us.
And the last one about the regulation part, where you are a strong votary and also a consultant, what kind of regulations do you see will regulate the chemical and petrochemical market in future?
I think the trend is really obviously, and yesterday I gave a talk on kind of comparison of regulations specifically in Asia Pacific. And if you see what kind of regulations are already in draft stages or regulations which have changed in a certain way, I would say we will certainly see more and more countries implementing chemical management systems, rather than just looking into, okay, a chemical has to be registered and we're just focusing on the hazard of a chemical. We're moving far more into systems where yes, the hazard is one part to look at, but then it's what risk does it actually cause, and not anymore just what risk is causing to human health. It's more focusing. A lot of the regulations are really implementing more and more measures to focus on environmental hazards, on environmental risks. So really moving also on the regulatory side into a chemical management that embeds sustainability, so to really protect also the environment and not just focusing on human health or physical hazards.